My name is Lori Reed. I've been creating artwork for 16 years, and I started doing traditional collage where I was combining found papers, maps, old photographs, and then I took a trip to Yellowstone and I had all these photographs that I wanted to work with of this beautiful spiritual place. So I started running filters on those photos and combining them in my collages. And then it was in like 2010, I was asked to do a collage workshop for some college students at Knox College, and it was part of a recycling weekend. And I thought I couldn't take brand new papers. It's recycling weekend. So I had this idea of maybe they could bring old homework and we could run it through a paper shredder to make it more interesting. And then the light bulb went off of I could run my manipulated photos through a paper shredder, which of course everyone would have that idea, right? And that got me into working with these strips in my imagery, just cutting my photographs into 1/4-inch strips because that's what the paper shredder size was. So I've stayed true to that, but now I hand cut the sheets of paper into strips. This is like after I've cut the imagery out of the sheet. So I do 3 generally versions of the same photo, cut them all into these 1/4-inch strips, which I can do in 5 minutes flat on a legal sheet. And then I start building my base layer of row 1, 2, 3. And then I come back with a second layer where I'm interrupting each line with another version of the photo so that you never see the same image going all the way across the whole piece of the artwork. It's always got at least one other filtered piece that's on there. And the third layer I often put in vintage postage stamps or topographical map or old ledger pages from the 1800s, so that from a distance you maybe think the work's a painting. Then you get a little closer and you see, no, there are all these horizontal strips of imagery, and then when you get really close, you suddenly realize you see someone's handwriting or some text out of an old book, so that there's kind of a hidden surprise when you get really close. I use acrylic matte medium to glue the imagery down on a panel, and then when I've got an entire layer done, I will coat that with the acrylic medium, then come back, do the second layer, coat it again, and at the very end I use a UV medium so that any of the handmade papers or vintage things that I'm using are not going to fade and that the image will last for many, many years. I have a whole stockpile of interesting handmade papers, and then people will just send me a photo and say, hey, a friend is cleaning out her mom's things. Do you want this old expense book from the 1850s? Yes, yes I do. I've got ledger paper from a paper mill in the Civil War times that Harvard had in their library, scanned it evidently to put it in a more compact form digitally for themselves, and it was given to me to use to collage with, and it took me quite a while to determine, could I actually cut this up? It's so beautiful, it's from a historic time, but I thought Harvard didn't want it. It was given to me to make art, so in my pieces with water lilies, I've used some of that in the water. I also have some shredded US currency that's sort of floating in the water of those water lily pieces. My husband does some work with banks on bank fraud, and I went to a conference with him, and the guys from the Federal Reserve were at their booth. None of the bankers were talking to them because bankers don't like Federal Reserve. And I said, are you guys giving away money? And they said, actually we are. And they hand me this little bag filled with tiny pieces of shredded $1,000 bills. They said, there's probably $1 million in that bag. So I said, I work with paper in my art. I'm gonna glue this into my imagery. And they said, well, here, take a couple more. So I walked away with $3 million. I'm really inspired by nature, and I respond to the landscape around me. When I travel, I'm always shooting pictures, thinking of using them in future art pieces. So I tend to work in outdoor views. I do have a couple of interiors in this show of flowers, so bringing nature inside. But for the most part, it's scenes I capture while I'm on vacation or just the central Illinois landscape. One in particular was chosen to be enlarged as a mounted mural on Southwest Washington Street in downtown. And it was really fun to go down and see my 1/4-inch strips of paper had been enlarged 4 inches high. So those postage stamps are super apparent that are in the foreground of that piece. And it was a 12 by 12 art piece that I made that's now 15 feet wide by 10 feet high. So it was really super fun to go and see how that had been enlarged. I always hope that people are drawn into this landscape view, maybe stop to try and figure out how it's made, but get lost in the scene that I've created. My best kind of story about that was a gallery in Iowa had a cancer center come in and say, we like her work, we're gonna buy these 2, can she do 4 more? And to think as I made those that these are going to be in a treatment room where someone going through a really hard time will maybe be pulled away for just a couple of minutes into this landscape, seeing the things I've hidden in it, and is taken to a place where it's serene and peaceful and removes them from what they're going through. One thing I share with people in gallery talks is I write the word joy on the bottom left corner of each panel as I start the art piece. Because for me, making the art is joy. I've chosen images that make me happy, that speak to me, and I hope they will in turn speak to the viewer, and that they maybe feel like, I just really want to buy that and take it home with me. And when they live with that piece on their wall, that every time they look at it, they too will hopefully feel joy. This is a work in progress, so you can see that I have the sheets numbered, and that helps me keep track as I'm moving between the different sheets of imagery. I know exactly where to find this section because, well, that's row 10. So I do 2 layers generally, keeping the numbers on, and then I'll come along with an X-Acto knife to cut those off. And that way it just kind of keeps me organized, especially on large pieces where I'm maybe working with tiled out imagery, so that I've got an upper left and upper right, and I have maybe 20 sheets of paper that I'm working with. So this is how I've evolved from the paper shredder, where everything was a lump of paper that I was spending half the day sorting, top, bottom. This is a much easier way to kind of keep it organized so that I can just efficiently build up the image and go from there. So now I'm at the point where I'll be adding in the postage stamps and some gold papers and hiding things in here. I have a gallery in Door County that's been selling about 2 pieces a month for me. And then I have work in a gallery in downtown Scottsdale, Arizona now. And then across the street here in Peoria Heights at Exhibit A, I participate in their exhibits pretty frequently. So. I'm in a group that we call the Art Sistas, and we meet generally every 5 or 6 weeks to workshop our ideas or what we're working on. And we will draw a word out of a little bag that we've stuffed at the beginning of the year, and we all make art in response to that. So some of my work has sprung out of ideas that came from those projects, and we're hoping to have a show together at the Galesburg Community Arts Center at the end of 2022. We don't know the date yet, but we're looking forward to all creating things that kind of work together yet are still our own body of work. My website is lorireedart.com, and from there you'd find links to my Instagram and my art Facebook page and a blog where I just post things as I finish them and maybe have a little more commentary about what I'm working on and the things I'm exploring.